Ever wondered what happens when you expose your wife's boyfriend in front of all his richest clients?
My phone buzzed at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that started normal and ended with my life exploding like a meth lab in a trailer park. FaceTime call from Brent Wallace, that smug coward who sold overpriced luxury cars to desperate idiots trying to look important. I almost declined, but something made me answer. Hey there, TJ. Brent's grinning face filled my screen, but the camera wasn't focused on him. Look how skilled your wife is, buddy. Been training her real good for you. The phone nearly slipped from my hands. There was Lauren, my wife of 15 years, on her knees in what looked like Brent's gaudy condo. She was going to town on him like it was her job, and from the practiced way she moved, maybe it had been for a while. Surprise, Tommy boy! Brent's voice dripped with fake sympathy. Thought you should know what your little wifey does during her late meetings at the law firm. I watched my marriage disintegrate in high definition. Lauren's blonde hair, the same hair I used to run my fingers through during lazy Sunday mornings, bobbed rhythmically. The emerald earrings I'd bought her for our anniversary caught the light as she worked. You sick piece of garbage, I managed, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest like steam in a pressure cooker. Hey now, don't shoot the messenger. She came to me, pal. Said she needed a real man for once. Brent's laugh was like nails on a chalkboard. Been going on for 6 months now. Figured you had a right to know before I make it official. The call ended, leaving me staring at my reflection in the black screen. Tom Baker, 43 years old, architect, former amateur boxer, and apparently the biggest fool in Derry Street. My hands shook as I set the phone down on my drafting table, surrounded by blueprints for houses that other people would call home, while mine crumbled to dust. An hour later, I was standing outside Brent's condo with a Louisville Slugger in one hand and my phone recording in the other. The building was one of those modern glass monstrosities that looked like a rejected Tetris piece. I'd actually designed something similar once, before I learned that just because you can build something doesn't mean you should. I didn't kick the door in. That's movie nonsense that gets you arrested. Instead, I used the spare key I'd seen Brent hide under a fake rock during one of his pool parties. The same parties where he'd slapped my back and called me buddy while secretly planning to destroy my life. They were in the living room, Lauren still half-dressed, Brent in a silk robe that probably cost more than most people's rent. The look on their faces when I walked in was worth every minute of hell they'd put me through. Tom! Lauren scrambled to pull her blouse closed. This isn't what it looks like. Really? Because it looks like my wife of 15 years is screwing the town's biggest unpleasant person in his overpriced bachelor pad. I kept my voice conversational the way I used to talk to difficult clients. But hey, maybe I'm seeing things wrong. Brent puffed out his chest, trying to look intimidating in his ridiculous robe. Now listen here, Baker. Lauren's made her choice. She wants to be with a real man who can provide for her. A real man? I laughed, and it wasn't a nice sound. Brent, you're a 41-year-old car salesman who still lives like a college frat boy. Your idea of culture is putting gray poop on a hot dog. Tom, please. Lauren stood up, smoothing down her skirt. We need to talk about this like adults. Adults? I pulled out my phone, showing them the recording I'd started the moment I walked in. Adults don't send Zex videos to their spouse's husband for kicks. Adults don't sneak around for 6 months like aroused teenagers. Brent's face went pale. You can't record us without permission. That's illegal. Actually, in New York, only one party needs to consent to recording. I consent. Thanks for the civics lesson, though. I'd looked it up during the drive over, along with a few other legal facts that might come in handy. Here's what's going to happen. You're both going to sit down, shut up, and listen while I explain how this plays out. Lauren opened her mouth to argue, but I held up my hand. I've got video of you two going at it like rabbits, audio of Brent bragging about stealing my wife, and 15 years of marriage that entitles me to half of everything we own together. The architecture firm, the house, the savings accounts, the retirement funds, all of it. I sat down in Brent's overpriced leather chair like I owned the place. Now we can do this the easy way, or the hard way. What's the easy way? Lauren asked quietly. You signed divorce papers giving me everything I want, and I keep this little home movie private. You get to slink away with whatever dignity you have left. And the hard way? Brent tried to sound tough, but his voice cracked like a 13-year-old's. I own this video to everyone in your contact lists. post it on every social media platform I can find, and make sure every person in Derry Street knows exactly what kind of people you are. Your boss at the dealership, Lauren's partners at the law firm, your country club buddies, everyone. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Outside that I could hear traffic on Main Street, normal people living their normal lives, while mine imploded in spectacular fashion. You wouldn't, Lauren whispered. Try me. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in Murphy's bar, the kind of dive where the beer was cheap and the lighting was dim enough to hide your shame. My best friend Jake Morrison slid into the booth across from me, his face wearing that careful expression people get when they're about to deliver bad news. Heard about you and Lauren, he said, signaling the bartender for a beer. Sorry, man, that sucks. Yeah, well, mess happens. I took a long pull from my bottle, tasting nothing. At least I found out before I wasted another 15 years. Jake fidgeted with his coaster, not meeting my eyes. Look, Tom, there's something you should know about the whole situation. What kind of something? Melissa knew. The bottle stopped halfway to my lips. Melissa King, Lauren's best friend since college. The woman who'd been maid of honor at our wedding and godmother to the kids we'd never had. The same Melissa who'd worked for my architecture firm for 3 years before I'd had to let her go during the recession. Knew what exactly? About Lauren and Brent. She's been covering for them, making excuses when Lauren couldn't make it to group dinners, stuff like that. Jake finally looked at me, and I could see the guilt in his eyes. Tom, we all knew. The words hit me like a punch to the solar plexus. All of you? Me, Danny, Rick, even Sarah. We've known for months. We kept hoping Lauren would come to her senses or that you'd figure it out on your own. I set the beer down carefully, afraid I might throw it otherwise. So instead of telling your supposed best friend that his wife was cheating on him, you all just sat back and watched the show? It wasn't like that, man. We talked about it, argued about whether to say anything. But Lauren's part of the group too, and Melissa kept saying you'd be devastated if you found out. I'm devastated now, Jake. The only difference is now I also know my friends are cowards. Jake's face flushed red. That's not fair. We were trying to protect you. Protect me? I laughed bitterly. You protected yourselves. You didn't want to deal with the mess, so you let me walk around looking like an idiot while everyone else was in on the joke. Tom, come on. You're upset, I get it, but don't take this out on us. Take what out on you? The fact that you're all spineless? The fact that when I needed real friends, I found out I didn't have any? The conversation spiraled from there. Jake got defensive, I got angrier, and by the time we were done, 15 years of friendship lay in pieces on the sticky barroom floor. He stormed out, leaving me alone with my beer and the growing realization that my entire life had been built on lies. I drove home to the house Lauren and I had shared, the one she'd already moved out of while I was at work. Her lawyer had been efficient. Within a week of our confrontation at Brent's condo, I'd been served with divorce papers and a restraining order claiming I'd threatened her, which was technically true, I suppose, though not in the way she made it sound. The house felt like a museum of my former life. Wedding photos still hung on the walls, her coffee mug still sat in the dishwasher, and her perfume still lingered in the bedroom. I'd been sleeping on the couch since she left, unable to face the bed where we'd made love for the last time 3 weeks ago, neither of us knowing it was the last time. My phone rang. Melissa's name flashed on the screens. What do you want? I answered without preamble. Tom, we need to talk. Her voice was tight with stress. This has gone far enough. Has it? Because from where I'm sitting, it's just getting started. You can't keep threatening Lauren and Brent. The restraining order is just the beginning. Keep this up, and you'll lose everything. I've already lost everything, Missy. My wife, my friends, my self-respect. What else is there? Your business, your reputation, your future. She paused. Tom, I know you're hurt, but destroying Lauren won't bring her back. I don't want her back. I want her to pay for what she did. And what about what you did? The question caught me off guard. What I did? You think you were the perfect husband? Always working late, always putting the business first, never making time for Lauren's needs? So this is my fault. I didn't give her enough attention, so she had to go find it somewhere else? I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm saying marriage is complicated, and maybe if you'd paid more attention to your wife instead of your blueprints, none of this would have happened. I hung up on her. Then I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and started planning. The next morning, I called in sick to work and began what I'd come to think of as my education in betrayal. If my wife and friends thought they could play me for a fool, they were about to learn that Tom Baker wasn't as stupid as he looked. I started with social media, creating fake accounts and following the digital breadcrumbs of Lauren and Brent's relationship. It didn't take long to find evidence of their affair scattered across Instagram and Facebook like confetti at a wedding. Photos of Brent's hands with Lauren's rings visible in the background, tagged at restaurants during times when Lauren had told me she was working late. A picture of Lauren wearing a necklace I'd never seen, posted by Brent with the caption, "Spoiling my girl." The timeline was damning. Their first public interaction was 8 months ago, a casual comment on one of Brent's car photos. But digging deeper, I found private messages they'd forgotten to delete, planning meetups and discussing how to keep their relationship secret. The earliest message was dated almost a year ago. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Tom's working late again. What else is new? Your husband's loss is my gain, beautiful. See you at 8. A year. They'd been carrying on for a full year while I worked 60-hour weeks to build the business that was supposed to secure our future together. I printed everything, organized it in folders, like I was preparing for a client presentation. Evidence of cheating, financial records showing money Lauren had been spending without my knowledge, credit card statements for hotels and restaurants I'd never been to. But the real goldmine was Lauren's laptop, which she'd forgotten in her rush to move out. Her email was still logged in, giving me access to months of correspondence with not just Brent, but with Melissa and their lawyer. The emails painted a picture of conspiracy that went far beyond a simple affair. Melissa had been coaching Lauren on how to manipulate me, how to hide assets, and how to build a case for an advantageous divorce settlement. "Remember, you need to establish a pattern of emotional mistreat," Melissa had written. "Document every argument, every time he raises his voice. The restraining order will be easier to get if you can show escalating behavior." "I feel terrible lying about Tom like this," Lauren had replied. "He's never actually hurt me. He doesn't have to hurt you physically. Emotional mistreat is just as valid. And after what he did to me at the firm, he deserves whatever he gets." There it was. Melissa's real motivation wasn't protecting Lauren. It was revenge against me for laying her off 5 years ago when the economy tanked and I couldn't afford to keep her on payroll. I'd agonized over that decision for weeks. Melissa had been a friend, but she'd also been the least experienced architect on my team. When 3 major contracts fell through in the same month, I'd had to choose between keeping her and keeping the business afloat. I'd tried to soften the blow, given her a generous severance package and glowing references. But apparently, that hadn't been enough. She'd spent 5 years nurturing a grudge, waiting for the perfect opportunity to destroy me. And she'd found it in my wife's midlife crisis. The more I read, the angrier I got. They'd planned everything: the affair, the divorce, even the restraining order. Lauren was supposed to get half the business, the house, and alimony. Brent would get a trophy wife with money, and Melissa would get her revenge served ice cold. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated me. I spent the next 3 days following Brent around town, documenting his routine. He was a creature of habit. Morning coffee at Starbucks, lunch at the country club, evenings at his condo, or out with Lauren. His Tesla was his pride and joy, a cherry red Model S that he babied like a newborn. On Friday night, I put the first phase of my plan into action. Brent's Tesla was parked in the lot behind Chez Laurent, the overpriced French restaurant where he'd taken Lauren for their 6-month anniversary dinner, the same restaurant where I'd proposed to Lauren 12 years ago. I waited until they went inside, then got to work. Sugar in the gas tank is a myth. Electric cars don't have gas tanks, but they do have tires, and those are surprisingly easy to slash if you know what you're doing. 4 quick cuts with a box cutter, and Brent's pride and joy was going nowhere. I left a note under the windshield wiper. "Looks like you're stuck. How does it feel to be powerless? A friend." Then I went home and waited for the fireworks. The fireworks came sooner than expected. My phone started ringing at 11 p.m., Brent's number flashing on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to him ranting about vandalism and threats and how he was going to have me arrested. The second call came from Lauren. "Tom, this has to stop," she said without preamble. "Brent's car was vandalized tonight. We know it was you." "Do you? That's interesting. What proof do you have? Who else would do something so petty?" "I don't know, Lauren. Maybe one of his customers who got sold a lemon. Maybe his wife. When she finds out about you two? Maybe someone who's just tired of watching him parade around town like he owns the place. His wife doesn't know about us. Yet. The silence stretched between us. Finally, Lauren sighed. What do you want, Tom? I want my life back. Since that's not possible, I'll settle for watching yours fall apart. You're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. You destroyed 15 years of marriage for a midlife crisis and a sports car. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences? I hung up and poured myself another bourbon. Phase 1 was complete. Time for Phase 2. The next morning, I drove to Brent's dealership. Wallace Luxury Motors was exactly what you'd expect. All glass and chrome, and expensive cars that most people couldn't afford. Brent was in his office, probably dealing with insurance claims and tow trucks. I walked in like I belonged there, nodding to the receptionist and heading straight for the customer lounge. There were a half-dozen people waiting for service, all of them looking like they had more money than sense. Excuse me, I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Is Brent Wallace available? I need to talk to him about the video he sent me. The receptionist looked confused. Video? Yeah, the one of him with my wife. I'm Tom Baker. Maybe you've heard of me? My wife Lauren's been sleeping with your boss for the past year. The waiting area went dead silent. Every head turned toward me, then toward Brent's office, where I could see him frantically gesturing at someone on the phone. Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding, the receptionist stammered. Oh, there's been a misunderstanding, all right. I misunderstood what kind of man Brent Wallace really is. See, I thought he was just a sleazy car salesman. Turns out he's also the kind of guy who sends Zex videos to his girlfriend's husband just to rub it in. One of the customers, an elderly woman in a Chanel suit, gasped audibly. A younger man started recording with his phone. I mean, what kind of person does that? I continued, warming to my theme. What kind of sick individual gets off on destroying someone else's marriage and then bragging about it? Brent burst out of his office, his face red with rage. You need to leave. Now! I'm a potential customer, Brent. Isn't the customer always right? I smiled at him, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. Although I have to say, your customer service is terrible. First you steal my wife, then you vandalize your own car to frame me. What's next? I didn't vandalize my own car, you psychopath. Then who did? Because according to the police report, there were no witnesses, no security cameras, and no evidence pointing to anyone specific. I'd checked that morning, almost like someone wanted to create drama without actually catching the real culprit. The crowd was eating it up. Phones were out, recording everything. By evening, this would be all over social media. Brent tried to grab my arm, but I stepped back smoothly. Don't touch me, Brent. That would be attack. And unlike you, I don't break the law for fun. Get out of my dealership. Your dealership? I looked around theatrically. Funny, I thought this was Wallace Luxury Motors, owned by Wallace Automotive Group, which, if I remember correctly, is owned by your father-in-law. The same father-in-law who's been married to your wife for 30 years and probably wouldn't appreciate knowing about your extracurricular activities. Brent's face went white. I'd done my homework, and his wife's father owned the dealership chain, and Brent was just the manager. A manager who could be fired at any time, especially if his personal life started affecting business. I left him standing there, surrounded by shocked customers and ringing phones. Phase 2 was complete. Time for the nuclear option. Monday morning, I walked into the offices of Baker & Associates Architecture like I owned the place, which technically I did at least half of it. Lauren might be trying to steal my business along with everything else, but she hadn't succeeded yet. The receptionist, Jenny, looked up nervously as I approached her desk. Mr. Baker, I wasn't expecting you today. Why wouldn't I be here, Jenny? This is my company. Well, Mrs. Baker said, she told us that you might not be coming in for a while because of the legal issues. What legal issues? I haven't been charged with anything. I haven't been served with any papers regarding the business. As far as I know, I'm still the senior partner of this firm. I walked past her desk toward the conference room, where I could see Lauren, Melissa, and two men in expensive suits having what looked like a very serious discussion. The door was closed, but the walls were glass, a design choice I was suddenly very grateful for. I opened the door without knocking. Tom! Lauren jumped up from her chair. You can't be here. The restraining order says I can't come within 500 feet of your residence or contact you directly for non-business purposes. This is business, and this is my office. I sat down at the head of the table in the chair I'd occupied for every major meeting for the past 10 years. Gentlemen, I don't believe we've been introduced. Tom Baker, senior partner. The older of the two suits cleared his throat. Richard Hawthorne, representing Mrs. Baker in the dissolution proceedings. This is my associate, David Chen. Pleasure. Now, what exactly are you dissolving in my conference room without my knowledge? Melissa spoke up for the first time. Tom, you need to be reasonable about this. The business has to continue operating during the divorce proceedings. And it will, under my management as it always has. That's not possible, Hawthorne said smoothly. Given the current circumstances, it would be inappropriate for you to maintain control of marital assets that are in dispute. Inappropriate according to whom? I built this company from nothing. I brought in every major client we have. I designed every building that's made us money. I leaned back in my chair. What exactly has Lauren contributed besides her name on the letterhead? She's contributed 15 years of marriage and partnership, Melissa snapped. She's entitled to half of everything. Is she? That's interesting. I pulled out a manila folder and spread its contents across the conference table. Because according to these financial records, Lauren has been systematically embezzling from the company for the past 8 months. The silence was deafening. Lauren's face went pale as she recognized the bank statements and canceled checks I'd printed from her laptop. Transfers to personal accounts, payments to vendors that don't exist, consulting fees paid to shell companies. I sorted through the papers like a dealer shuffling cards. My accountant estimates the total theft at around $200,000. Those aren't thefts, Lauren said weakly. Those are legitimate business expenses. Really? Then you won't mind explaining to the IRS why you've been claiming personal expenses as business deductions? Or to the state licensing board why you've been using company funds for personal use? I smiled at her. I've already prepared the reports. All I have to do is hit send. Hawthorne tried to regain control of the situation. Mr. Baker, these allegations are serious. If you have evidence of financial impropriety, it should be handled through proper channels. You mean like how my wife's affair should have been handled through proper channels? Like how my friends should have told me what was going on through proper channels? I laughed. I'm done with proper channels. From now on, we play by street rules. What do you want? Lauren asked quietly. I want you out of my business. I want you out of my life. I want you to disappear and take your sleazy boyfriend and your vindictive best friend with you. And in exchange? In exchange, I don't file criminal charges for embezzlement. I don't report you to the Bar Association for ethics violations. I don't send the video of you and Brent to every lawyer in the state. Melissa stood up abruptly. You can't blackmail us like this. Can I? I turned to look at her directly for the first time. You know, Missy, I always wondered why you were so eager to help Lauren destroy our marriage. Then I found your emails. Her face went rigid. What emails? The ones where you admit this whole thing is revenge for me laying you off. The ones where you coach Lauren on how to lie about domestic mistreat. The ones where you three plan to frame me for harassment and steal my business. I pulled out my phone and started reading from the screen. Remember, you need to establish a pattern of emotional mistreat. Document every argument, every time he raises his voice. The restraining order will be easier to get if you can show escalating behavior. Melissa sank back into her chair like a deflated balloon. Here's another good one, I continued. I feel terrible lying about Tom like this. He's never actually hurt me. And your response? He doesn't have to hurt you physically. Emotional mistreat is just as valid. And after what he did to me at the firm, he deserves whatever he gets. The lawyers were frantically taking notes, probably calculating how much this was going to cost their client in legal fees and settlement negotiations. So here's what's going to happen, I said, standing up and walking to the whiteboard where I'd sketched out so many building designs over the years. Lauren is going to sign over her share of the business to me for the princely sum of $1. She's going to drop the restraining order and the divorce proceedings. She's going to disappear from my life forever. And if she doesn't? Hawthorne asked. Then I release everything. The affair videos, the embezzlement evidence, the conspiracy emails. I file criminal charges and civil lawsuits. I make sure that everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of people they really are. I walked to the door, then turned back for one final shot. Oh, and Melissa, you're fired. Again, security will escort you out in 5 minutes. Don't bother cleaning out your desk. I'll have your personal items mailed to you." I left them sitting there in stunned silence and walked back to my office. Through the glass walls, I could see them arguing frantically, pointing at the papers I'd left behind, making phone calls. It was almost anticlimactic. After months of betrayal and weeks of planning, it all came down to a simple business meeting. No dramatic confrontations, no violence, no arrests, just the cold, hard application of leverage and consequences. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over." I typed back, "Yes, it is." The Derry Street Fall Festival was always the biggest event of the year, drawing thousands of people from all over the county. Main Street would be closed to traffic, lined with vendor booths selling everything from homemade crafts to funnel cakes. There would be live music, carnival rides, and the traditional Community Appreciation Awards ceremony, where local business leaders were recognized for their contributions to the town. This year, I was scheduled to present the award for Outstanding Community Partnership, an honor I'd earned through years of pro bono work designing affordable housing in community centers. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd be standing on a stage talking about partnership while my own life was falling apart. But as I stood behind the podium, looking out at the crowd of familiar faces, I realized this was the perfect opportunity for one final act of justice. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the PA system. "It's great to see so many friends and neighbors here tonight, celebrating what makes Derry Street such a special place to live." I could see Lauren in the crowd, standing near the back with Brent. They'd been trying to keep a low profile since our conference room showdown, but apparently couldn't resist coming to the festival. Melissa was there too, closer to the front, probably hoping to hear me humiliate myself publicly. You know, they say that small towns are built on relationships, the bonds between neighbors, friends, and family that hold us all together. Tonight, I want to talk about what happens when those bonds are broken. A murmur went through the crowd. This wasn't the usual feel-good speech people expected at these events. 3 weeks ago, I discovered that my wife of 15 years was having an affair with a local businessman. Not only that, but my closest friends had known about it for months and chosen not to tell me. The murmur became a buzz. People were pulling out their phones, sensing that something newsworthy was about to happen. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is private business, not something for a public forum. And you'd be right if that's all there was to it. But it turns out this wasn't just an affair. It was a conspiracy. I could see Lauren pushing through the crowd, trying to get closer to the stage. Brent was right behind her, his face flushed with anger or embarrassment. You see, my wife's best friend, Melissa King, had been plotting revenge against me for 5 years. When I had to lay her off during the recession, she decided that someday, somehow, she was going to make me pay. And she found the perfect weapon in my wife's midlife crisis. "Stop this," Melissa shouted from the crowd. "You can't do this." "Can't do what? Tell the truth? Because that's all I'm doing here. Telling the truth about what happens when good people make bad choices." I pulled out my phone and held it up so everyone could see the screen. I have videos, emails, financial records, everything you need to understand how 3 people conspired to destroy my marriage, steal my business, and frame me for crimes I didn't commit. The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on every word. Lauren Baker, my soon-to-be ex-wife, embezzled over $200,000 from our architectural firm to fund her affair. She filed false police reports claiming I threatened her. She tried to steal half of a business she never helped build. I could see people in the crowd turning to look at Lauren, who had stopped pushing forward and was now trying to back away toward the exits. Brent Wallace, the man she was sleeping with, sent me explicit videos of their encounters just to humiliate me. He's been lying to his own wife for over a year while carrying on this affair. And he's been using his position at his father-in-law's car dealership to launder money through fake sales. That last part wasn't true, but Brent didn't know I was bluffing. His face went white as a sheet. And Melissa King, the mastermind behind it all, spent 5 years planning this revenge. She coached my wife on how to lie to lawyers, how to hide assets, how to manipulate the legal system to destroy an innocent man. "This is slander," someone shouted from the crowd, probably one of their lawyers. "Is it? Because I have proof of everything I'm saying. Audio recordings, video evidence, email trails, financial documents, everything admissible in court, everything legally obtained, everything true." I stepped back from the microphone and looked out at the sea of faces staring up at me. Some looked shocked, some looked disgusted, some looked entertained, but they were all listening. I'm not asking for your sympathy, I continued. I'm not asking you to take sides. I'm just asking you to remember that actions have consequences. When you betray someone's trust, when you lie and cheat and steal, there's always a price to pay. I could see Lauren crying now, Brent trying to comfort her while simultaneously looking for an escape route. Melissa had disappeared entirely, probably heading for her car. The Community Partnership Award goes to everyone who believes that honesty, loyalty, and integrity still matter in this world. Everyone who understands that we're only as strong as our word and only as trustworthy as our actions. I set the microphone down and walked off the stage, leaving behind a crowd buzzing with excitement and scandal. My phone was already ringing. Reporters, lawyers, probably half the town wanting to know more details. But I didn't answer. I got in my truck and drove home to my empty house, poured myself a bourbon, and sat on my porch listening to the sounds of the festival continuing without me. It was over. Lauren, Brent, and Melissa were finished in this town. Their reputations were destroyed, their schemes exposed, their futures uncertain. Lauren would lose her job at the law firm. Brent would be fired from the dealership, and Melissa would never work in architecture again. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake, my former best friend. Jesus, Tom, what have you done? I typed back on what I had to do. Another text, this one from Lauren. I hope you're happy. You've destroyed everything. You destroyed everything, I replied. I just made sure everyone knew about it. The festival was winding down now, the crowds dispersing, the vendors packing up their booths. Tomorrow, Derry Street would wake up to a new reality, one where Tom Baker wasn't the cuckolded husband everyone pitied, but the man who'd fought back and won. I raised my glass to the empty street and smiled for the first time in months. They'd wanted to break me. Instead, I'd broken them. And damn, it felt good. The end.